hammering it?
No, we've been trying to work out our issues here. We're a little late today.
Are we good? Can everybody hear us?
Stacy told me not to be late. Last night, she called, we talked yesterday. Don't be late. All right, good morning, everybody.
Nicole, can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Oh, good, all right.
Great. All right. Anna, do you want to get us started?
Sure. Well, thank you. I'm surprised we don't have more today. This is kind of the last bite at the policy, the new policy that we have been reviewing and drafting. And so I will say we sent out another red line yesterday, but it's fairly similar. We just had to make a couple corrections, and I received back last night also from legal. They have some red lines, but it doesn't change the policy at all. It's just cleanup type stuff. So what we talk about today is pretty much what the board will consider. Not pretty much. It will be what the board will consider on May 1st. I don't know, we don't have Kathy with us today, so I don't know that we have a Thule Trust update. I know that the Thule Trust, if you'll recall, Susan resigned and Kathy has stepped in interim as the interim. I don't know what her title is, but she has been working to put the trust on a new path, I think, and so we'll see, where that leads us. The Tulare Lake Subbasin, not a lot of change there. We're still, in the midst of litigation. Although I believe when that litigation lifts, things will move fairly quickly. And one of the reasons for this updated policy is Tri-County still needs to submit their new GSP to the state for Tulare Lake. And I would, this policy is key to that. Any plan that does not include demand reduction and management actions will not be accepted. So that is one of the reasons, and I have a whole list of reasons to go through today why we are doing this. I know we kind of know, but I just wanted to remind everybody, and I think I'll go through them. The Thule Subbasin, there's not really an update other than we still have boundary issues with Delano Early Mart. That is a holdup as far as completing the plans, but we are looking to work through those with the facilitator. So why are we doing this new allocation policy? Why are we considering subsidence management and water quality management and water level management plans? There's one goal, and the goal is to maintain local control and to avoid a state interim plan, which is imminent at some point if we cannot manage ourselves. So that's the goal. The allocation policy, if you'll remember, the old allocation policy was approved in 2021. When it was approved, the board said that we would look at that policy in 5 years, revise the policy, and that is what we're doing. The current policy does not reflect each subbasin's native yield. It is a harmonized policy that was used the best data at the time. That data is not correct any longer, and the harmonized policy is really not acceptable to the state, and according to our legal counsel, is no longer defensible as well. So we have to separate the policies into, we're going to separate them into 3 policies. We're going to separate Tulare County's portion, Tulare Lake's portion, and then the 2 management areas in the Thule into 2 separate policies. Coordination within the subbasins is required, and the new policy developed for the Thule subbasin coordinates with the Thule subbasin on native yield, as well as the ramp down schedule that that, the subbasin has, been given. And, it also coordinates with Tulare Lake, the best available data currently in Tulare Lake, and so, that is what we're using. And the staff and DWR have been clear that demand management must be included in a plan. So, this new policy, again, will be included in our, submitted plans. And then why the subsidence management plan? The subsidence management plan is a little tougher, but there are some good reasons for considering it. State staff have, said that you must have demand management, but they also wanted to see adaptive response, if undesirable results were occurring. And they wanted some sort of triggered response that we would undertake if we were seeing undesirable results. So Pixley and Laura Tooley and Tom Harder, created what we have been looking at as the patchwork quilt and management actions. State Water Resource Control Board staff have reviewed those and have basically given a head nod and said, yes, we like these. And they also have indicated that they will, before the end of the year, I would say before September, or maybe in September, I'm not sure, but will consider, not including Pixley and Laura Tooley in the fees that you have to pay to the state. So an exemption for Pixley and Laura Tooley in state fees if they deem this plan sufficient, and thus far, everything has looked like they do.
Did they give them a date, Deanna, on that yet?
I don't think there's a date
So
yet.
staff is still reviewing the plans that Pixley and Laura Tooley.
They've reviewed them, they've said yes,
Oh, they said yes.
pretty much, yeah. They've
Okay.
said, they've said, we like it. There's nothing to change except for some language in it here and there, but they do want to see it implemented.
So then growers there will not need to pay if it's approved, but I would say, what's the right term? If they are carved out similar to Delano and Kern Tulare,
That's
they will
correct.
have to report individually.
That's right. Now, will the state approve that? I don't know, but they've indicated that they will consider it, and they have most definitely said that they like this
Good morning.
subsidence management plan. Good morning, Myron. And so those are good reasons to consider the subsidence management plan. And the department also, in their SIGMA update this week, said that they will be releasing best management practices for subsidence. And those best management practices would, in Paul Gosling's word, likely be accompanied with emergency regulations. The law did give, the department the power to implement emergency regulations in some cases, and they think that this will be necessary with subsidence. What does that mean for Tri-County particularly? I don't know. I would assume that you would see it along the Frank-Kern Canal if they come out with emergency regulations, but they could include the southeast area. They could include the north management area for that matter. I really don't know. It was unclear where that would take place. I'm assuming it will be around critical infrastructure. So that's my diatribe this morning. I just want to, remind everybody why we're doing this. It's, it's quite an undertaking. It makes a lot of changes. It's certainly harsher than our first round of allocations. But again, it is in line with each sub-basin's goals and a priority for the state to see that we are including demand management and also nimble response management to undesirable results.
All right, I gotta follow that.
But each GSA might have different goals, right? Kind of, sort of.
You can manage differently than other GSAs, but it still has to be coordinated with all of your neighbors, and it still has to get us to sustainability by 2040, and it has to avoid undesirable results, or in the state's words, mitigate undesirable results along the way.
I don't like the mitigation
Neither do I.
wording.
it was troubling to hear State Water Resource Control Board, chair say that he was very happy to see subsidence mitigation in some plans. That is a slippery slope that I'm not sure we wanna go down.
Yeah, agreed.
So I gotta follow that. So let me, just for anybody on the call who's not aware, yesterday there was a, update from the State Water Board staff to the board itself on SGMA. And that that update, I should say, is available for, on their YouTube channel. Anybody who's interested can watch it. The meeting does cover a few other things, but there's definitely a section where the state board staff gives an update, and then DWR, as Dan already mentioned, Paul Gosling gives an update as well. Deanna touched on all the critical things, but there were some very troubling things that came out of that. First and foremost, I think they must have spent at least 20 minutes talking about public outreach and their requirements for public outreach and things of that nature. That wasn't so much troubling, but it does tend to show you where the focus of the state is. The more troubling part of it was the subsidence and their lengthy discussion about the requirements for subsidence, this issue that Deanna mentioned about the regulatory requirements and things of that nature that might be coming up. They did say that the subsidence DMP, the best management practice document, is supposed to come out in the next 2 months. It said second quarter, so hopefully by June. It might be June 30th at the rate these things go. But the things that they talked about were still, they really highly praised WIA's mitigation plan for well mitigation, which is very restrictive and very demanding on any GSA, and then they also praised the Lower Tule and Pixley's science management plan. So both of them got called out as a positive, and while they didn't use these exact terms, the tone of their message was that's the expectation for everybody. Which is what we've been kind of working on, right? We've been expecting that the QUIA system, or the QUIA program, and the Lower Tule and Pixley requirements were going to be what we were going to have to meet.
What is QUIA's?
It's their well mitigation. Myron, if a well goes dry.
Right, is it different than ours?
It has
more robust, or
it's
what?
more robust, yeah.
Like, can you, one idea or one example?
Water within 24 hours to anybody who has an issue, drinking water within 24 hours, 72 hours, you have.
Yeah, we actually have that.
I think we have
that
too.
in place, yeah. Thule's is very similar, although I will say what we have currently on our website needs to be updated some more. We've been working with the subbasin on a subbasin-wide mitigation plan, but that's all included in this, revised GSP, and it hasn't been completed yet. We do have that agreement with Mental Health Enterprises, so we have that 24-hour water and 72-hour response. But many areas we're not really considering being that robust. I think QUIA and Tule are pretty similar. Tulare Lake's not, though. Tulare Lake has been a little bit more.
Kern has done they've taken a similar approach to QUIA. They've changed their approach to it, too, right? So QUIA kind of sets the standard.
And everybody's been kind of following it in place.
Yeah.
All right, I think the issue there, they also have a fairly robust program for outreach and things of that nature in that well mitigation program as well. So there are a number of things that they are looking for. I mean, they spent an inordinate amount of time, you guys heard the meeting, talking about.
I fast forwarded making it. I just went through
You might fast forward, Steve, but it's still
I wouldn't
20
do
minutes.
it. I know.
So, the reason I'm saying all that is it kind of it sets the basis for why we did some of the things, is that we're in line with what, the state is expecting. So having said that, as Deanna already talked about, what you'll notice, that the groundwater allocation policy, as Deanna said, has been split into 3 parts. There's 3 management areas now. They're very specific. The north management area, the southeast management area, and the Florida Lake management area. And each of them, while most of the document is almost exactly the same, there are some changes for each one. I'm going to start. You have one of these pulled up?
I do.
Stacy, which one do you have?
I have the north.
The north, okay. So I'm just going to use the north as an example, walk you through the changes that were made to the document, some of the things that were specific. And you can see, okay, yeah. So the document has stayed pretty much the same. I'm going to just walk through a couple of the changes that are specific to the last time we spoke. And Nicole, I do want to address one of your questions from last time as well. So we'll get to that here in just a bit. So as you go through this document, you'll notice that, we do start talking about the north management area, which is primarily the Angela Water District areas, not exclusively, but primarily, and a map of the is included as well, beach management area. So if you get down to section 3.0, in the priority of use here, section item number 3, you'll see that there's the Angela groundwater mitigation credit, and that applies to the district only lands. That, of course, is taken out of some of the other areas which the district doesn't have lands in. And if we continue on, all of this is the same as you've seen previously until you get to section 5.11 on page 4. And here, we just for the sake of clarification, we took out the jurisdictional boundaries of the Tri-County Water District, and that was specifically taken out because we're not going to allow you to move native yield from the Tule subbasin in Tulare Lake or vice versa. Credits, yeah. So that's why that language is struck out of there. It was, or a portion of that language was taken out. Okay. And the native yield values, as Deanna's already implied, for Tulare Lake and the Tule subbasin are different. The subbasins calculated those in a different way, and so the values are different. And that's also one of the reasons that we're not mixing the native yield between the 2 subbasins. Okay. Section 5.6, or I'm sorry, 5.5, 5.5. Just a clarification here on annual pumping limits. It is inclusive of your native yield, your tier 1, which is the language that we had last time, but we also wanted to clarify that it's inclusive of any landowner developed credits as well. The other change, it's not in blue, but it should have been, is that we upped the number from 3.0 to 3.4 acre feet. So there is some additional use for landowner developed credits for any, before we have any annual pumping limits. Okay. We had added some language in here to kind of connect the allocation policy with the management plans And, did you make a change to this, or?
I didn't do it either way, so.
Oh, okay.
I was waiting for legal to get back and,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I haven't changed it, but there's some discussion on 5.6, whether we should have this be a standalone document or we should refer to the management plan. And so, because they're going to be considered separately by the board, you know, my thought is possibly we strike any connection to the management plan. Although, in my opinion, the allocation program is a foundation for the management plan, and they kind of go hand in hand. Because, again, I believe the state wants to see the triggers if you're going towards undesirable results. But, you know, I think I'm open for suggestions on that, whether we want them to be standalone documents completely, or we do want to make some connection between the two. I've had it both ways. That's why when Amir asked me, did I change it? Well, I've changed it 3 times.
Because I thought, I mean, one of them, the draft, he cut it at me,
We cut it out,
Yeah.
we put it
I
back,
think this one I didn't see it.
so, I don't know. I'm not sure it matters.
Provisions are in the middle of the
Okay.
table, so
Okay.
if you wanna pick up one of each of those piles. you'll
Yeah,
get
I thought I had the.
I'm not sure if it
what did I
matters.
do?
in
I'm not
the end.
sure. At the end of the day, the management plan will refer back to the allocation in
Yeah.
that document.
That's
but
important.
it might not.
Matter
in
in this
this,
document.
yeah, in this case, right now, we have it as, you know, we strike it out.
I think that's probably fine.
Yeah, it's not the most critical, issue. We just wanna let you guys know if we were taking something out. Section 6.13, we added some language that accounts that have reported meter data, without reported meter data, skipped an important word there, or have triggered an investigation from 6.12, will be billed using Land IQ data at a 2% multiplier. So there is a cost to the GSA to have to do this extra work, and we do want to let landowners know. This is also to encourage everyone to get metered up. Now, I'm going to stop for a second, but I do want to, Nicole, if you're on, you had specifically asked last time about rolling over transitional groundwater Tier 1 allocation year to year. The way the policy was written last time, and it has not changed, it was an annual basis. We would allow you to use that water for that year. If you didn't use that transitional water that year, it did not carry over. That's the way the policy is currently. Unlike native yield, the native yield rolls over, but we don't allow that for the Tier 1 pumping.
Per year?
Yeah, per year. Yeah.
The native yield can roll over though.
The native yield can roll over.
Okay, but is that, so what you're saying is we technically have 7 point, what is it, for 5 years?
Yeah. 7.2, I believe, yeah.
And so, yeah, you're saying, but then you have a year that you don't use hardly any
Yeah, if you can go to table
transitional
2
pumping,
at the end.
Yeah, I think so.
then you lose that?
I thought it rolled till the 5th year. And
No,
then
hold
went
on. The landowner developed credits do, that the, native yield does, all of that does. But Nicole specifically asked about transitional Tier 1 pumping, and the way it's written right now, it does not roll over. In fact, so if you look at 25-26, it's 1.6, right, Myron? On table 2, if you didn't use that, all you would get was 1.46 the next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it's written right now. So Nicole had asked, hey, can we do a 3-year rolling, roll over, maybe 5, maybe 4, 3 or something else, so that if there is a wet year, we get lots of water in a year, we don't just lose that water forever, right?
And likewise, let's say that you fallow some land, you're in the program,
Right.
and all of a sudden that program ends you know, year 4, and you say, well, you know, we can farm this ground for this 5th year yet.
Right.
You wanna be able to grab that water.
No, I agree, Martin, I agree you want to grab that water. No one's disagreeing with that. The question is in order to achieve our sustainable, pumping, we have it set up on a year-to-year basis. That transitional number keeps dropping every year, right? It doesn't, what you pumped last year doesn't matter, and if you didn't pump it fully, it didn't matter because, so for example, let's look at 25 and 26, 27, right? The transitional pumping for that year in 25, 26 is 38,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the next year it's 34, and it drops all the way down to 25,000 acre feet of actual volumetric pumping.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can go back and pump some of your previous years, then we're going to exceed those numbers.
But then, since you didn't pump it,
you never used it, right?
it's still there, right?
Yeah.
Technically.
Yeah.
I mean, we gotta have some leeway here, I think, in some of this stuff, because it's gonna be the death of us all anyway.
And that's what.
And, you know, based on what I see is, you know, we need a lot of help in regard to somebody either buying us out or whatever.
Right.
But in the meantime, if we're having these programs and we're able to grab a hold of these things and try to, you know,
Right.
lessen the impact,
So,
and all of a sudden, but yeah, these programs are not a guarantee. So then all of a sudden you get to year 26 or 28, 29.
You know, Mayor, can I add on to what Myron's saying? Because, you know, I just sent my comment letter to you guys at 9 o'clock, so I didn't know. Oh my God, because you said I had till 10 o'clock. Sorry. But I thought about this, what Myron's saying,
Yeah.
and Jay and I talked about this too, but,
Right.
taking a page from Eastern Thule, I know that's, you don't want to compare it, but I would recommend that we have complete flexibility between 1 through 4.
1 through
4. And I don't think at the end of this, and you move them or however you want to move them around. I haven't read all the numbers, but I know how Eastern Thule dealt with it because we're getting such a little amount of sustainable yield.
Yeah.
We're getting 0.22.
Yeah.
So my suggestion, my comment letter points out, we're dropping so quickly on our allocation. We're going from 70 roughly, because I pulled the stuff out of the annual report, you know, it talked about that. We're going from 70 to 50, all the way down to, 18,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, right off the bat, you're losing 4,000 to 5,000 acres year one, you follow. And every year after that, we're going another 1,000 acres. So what I'm suggesting is, instead of just going whoopee-doopie, you know, you can go from
The priority of use.
yeah, just
Have flexibility.
Complete flexibility. You can move transitional tier 1, pay that every year. You want to use your transitional
And
or
hold on to your
hold on to your native or whatever.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with
I don't
that,
see
too.
how that impacts our sustainability plan.
doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Because just like we did in Eastern Truly, we gave ourselves such a little bit of a sustainable yield.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. It's not going to solve this carryover issue, Myra, but farmers are wonderfully creative. I haven't had a chance to look at all the potential, but there might be ways to give yourself another year or two.
Yeah.
Because all I'm asking, and I point out in the letter, is we need time to go from irrigated to non-irrigated. And that's going from a lot of wells to like no wells, you know?
And we do have 2
So,
already.
Okay.
anyway, so that's all I had to say, because you guys didn't get a chance to look at it. That's what I had, that's what's in the letter.
Yeah.
It's up
So
there.
Gabe and then Nicole.
All right. So, Gabe, if you want to go ahead and put your comments in, then and Nicole, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to propose.
Oh, you didn't want to have him ask the question?
No, I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I do want that,
I
yeah.
thought you meant in the chat. You
Oh,
put it in.
no, I meant, go ahead, and unmute yourself and ask the question. I assume they can unmute themselves.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Now in 2026, what happens if a landowner uses 2 acre feet of transitional water? Are they just charged the penalty for exceeding the 1.6, or do they lose the following year's allocation in a
No, so
corresponding?
so Gabe, you get charged the tier 2 fee,
Yes.
but since you did not exceed the total pumping limit for the year, you're not losing allocation.
If you
Gotcha.
exceed
Okay.
the 3.4, you lose the allocation.
Right. So we
Understood.
wanted
Thank you.
to, yeah.
That was my question as well. So tier 2 is basically like part of that annual pumping cap.
I wouldn't say it that way. But yes, you don't start losing allocation until you exceed the annual pumping limit. That's where we put our, that's what we want to limit ourselves to. So,
Gotcha.
But I would pay the $500 an acre foot fee for any amount pumped over that year's transitional allocation, but not lose anything until that 3.4 number is reached.
Your transitional plus native for the year, if you exceed that, you'd be at the 500 penalty fee. And if you exceed the 3.4, you'll lose any acre foot you go over will be a 1-to-1 ratio loss for the next year's allocation of transitional water.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was my question as well, just clarifying how tier 2 related to the annual pumping cap.
So let's go back to Myron's question and then the stuff that Steve said as well. So right now, as I said, we have your transitional is limited to 1 year. It does not roll over. Here's a couple options that I want to run by the group. The simplest option, of course, is that we allow you to roll over any unused transitional, and we do it similar to what we've done for the others, which is on that 5-year basis, right? If you don't use some of 26, you can roll it over and use it in future years, and then after 5 years, it drops off completely. So that's option 1 for the group. It also keeps in mind with what a second ago what Steve said, which is you can use it in whatever order you want, right? So that's certainly keeping in line with that. The second option then is that, and this is obviously a little bit more restrictive, is that we allow the board a flexibility of saying, hey, we had a wet year, we had whatever happened, whatever event happened, we're going to allow you to roll over all your transitional for, a year or two or whatever. And the reason that I realize the first one is way more of interest to you guys, but the reason I'm bringing the second one up is that I think it'll be a little bit more right word. We'd probably be able to sell that a little better to the rest of the GSAs and the state. Now, that's not to say that the first one won't fly. I'm not saying that, but I am a little concerned that we have to start reducing pumping. We have to start putting some kind of limits. I know, the other thing, of course, is Subsidence itself and the management plans are going to have their own impacts on certain areas, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But if you guys want the maximum flexibility, we could roll over those transitional year to year, or, on a 5-year rolling value like we did others. So let's say you only, just using the numbers that are on the screen, and I'm going to make my life easy and do easy math. Let's say you did use 1 acre foot of transitional in 26, that would roll over 0.6, and then 26, 27 in a great year, we have another super wet year, and we're all super happy. You don't use any of that 0.46 or 1.46. You would then roll over that as well, so you would, it would start to accumulate in your account, and you could use it in future years. Now, the 3.4 limit still applies. So it's not like you can just say, hey, I've got all this transitional water, I can pump it all in 1 year. that limit still does apply. We have to have a limit on what we can pump annually.
No, I agree there, but, you know, you gotta have,
As much flexibility.
you know, and I know that, you know, it might make a difference between permanent crops and what I do.
Mhm.
I understand that, but, because, you know, permanent crops are probably not gonna participate in any fallowing programs or anything like
Right.
that come along, right?
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, if you know what you got, then you can really do a budget every year depending on what ground you wanna use it on and,
Right.
you know, so.
So maybe we do that where, you know, the 5-year, similar to the language we have on the groundwater, landowner groundwater development credits, and we do it for the 5-year, so it rolls off after the 5th year, or the 6th year, I guess, so you would have it for.
I think that would help,
To
definitely.
try to sell it, you know, I'm to the point now, like, you know, we don't have a choice anyway.
We don't have much
We
of a
have to
choice.
maximize everything that we can within the, whatever we're allowed to, right?
Right. These are very low numbers, and they're getting smaller, as Steve pointed out, and, you know, it's gonna be a difficult transition.
I'm fine with the rolling.
Yeah. Nicole, I was gonna ask you, this was kind of something you had brought up last time, are you, I mean, it's probably not perfect, but is it better?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, definitely adds some increased flexibility.
Yeah. So, similar to the language that we have on landowner developed credits, the tier 1 water, we will allow to roll over on a 5-year,
It's not transferable, so
Not
it's
transferable.
not as if people are accumulating it with the thought that they're gonna sell it. It can
Right.
only be used on their property, so.
right,
You know, and if landowners are actively fallowing stuff, you know, that transitional water is not gonna last forever anyway, it decreases so quickly.
Yes.
It, you know, gives them the ability to maximize their profit on land that is still in, you know, in
Yeah.
production.
So let me clarify one thing though. What we are not saying is that you get all that water up front.
Right.
Okay, so every year, it's whatever you don't use in that 1-year period, that rolls over and moves forward.
Mhm.
So it's not like you can pump 27 water in 26, transitional water in 26, yeah.
Well, yeah, you still have the limit.
Yeah.
You still have a limit, yeah.
Yeah.
The allocation will still be made yearly
Yes,
for native and for transitional, so every year it'll go in there instead of being in a bucket the way it was before for 5 years.
Okay.
okay, some of the,
Now there was one change?
yeah, one
Good.
change, yeah,
Positive.
yeah.
Oh, no, two. We're
Two, yeah,
into the,
yeah,
yeah,
priority of use.
Yeah.
priority of use.
Priority of use,
Allow
so,
flexibility.
so let's just go back, for everybody, section 3. Yeah, let's go back,
Okay.
just to be 100% clear, section 3. That priority of use, that, what you see on the screen will remain the default priority of use.
Yeah.
And all that, everything else after the end of that word where it says default priority of use, the rest of that paragraph will be changed to read that the landowner, can change that priority and notify the GSA.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be very specific about, you know, we try to be very flexible in the office, but that really must be noticed to us no later than the first week after the quarter ends. After we bill, we're not going back and rearranging and rebilling, so.
But it stays there too, Deanna, once we
It
do
stays
that,
until you
we
call
tell,
and change
change
it
it back,
again. Yeah.
perfect, okay.
Easy to do, but once that time period is passed, we're
just
not
need an
gonna
email.
rebilling.
Email, first week of the quarter, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I just want to be 100% clear, if Steve changes his priority, that's his priority
Until he changes it
until he
again.
changes it again.
That's
Yeah.
right.
All right,
And maybe that needs to go in there too.
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful. That was
Yeah.
the question I had this morning, so. You don't want to automatically reset.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the default until you change it, then whatever you change it to will be your personal account's
Yeah.
default from there on out until you change it again. And you have until the first week, at the end of the first week of each quarter,
Yep. It's
Okay.
basically before billing.
before billing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's section 3. Any hands up? I can't.
No, there aren't.
Okay.
See, there are some chats. No, nothing to worry about.
Okay. Then the second change is, section 5.3. This is about the tier 1 allocation. And in section 5.13, let's see,
5.31.
5.31, we are,
No change, there's nothing crossed out there with.
Should we add something?
yeah, I'm gonna, similar to, 5.25, you see the language, just go up, just 2.5.
There we go.
Yeah, where it says that that language about the developed credits will expire on a rolling basis, 5 years. We're gonna add a new section under 5.3 that will mirror that for the transitional pumping. So that you have a 5-year, rolling basis.
Is native yield the same way too, Amir?
Yes, native yield is the same way, yeah.
Where's that at? I see it rolls over on 5.11.
Oh, I have that.
Transferred anywhere within the Troy County.
Oh, it doesn't say that, does it?
We should add that for native yield too, and just make
Okay.
them all the same.
Yeah, I didn't see that for native under 511.
You're gonna add the 5 years?
Yeah, we're gonna have the 5-year rolling basis for the native yield as well. Okay, so 3 changes. All right, 3 changes, just sorry, everybody. Section 3, we talked about on the priority of use. Section 5.1, on determination of native yield, we're gonna add a section there that talks about a 5-year rolling basis for the native yield. And then 5.3, we're gonna add a new section that talks about the fact that your native yield will roll over and will be, on a 5-year rolling basis as well. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, tier one, yeah, the transitional tier 1 water.
Good.
Okay.
We have a policy.
We have a policy that's going to the board. We will make some changes, and in fact, since I'm out next week, I will make these changes this afternoon, get them back to Deanna and Stacy. Stacy's already mocking me. I just wanna go on record as saying Stacy's mocking me here. So, as long as I get them to noon tomorrow to you by noon, you will be able to post them on the website, and everybody will be able to see the.
Did you have sometimes getting a hard time getting back to you, Stacy? Is that what
Getting
you're?
back, responding at the exact moment.
Yeah, I know what that feels like. Yeah, I know. Okay.
All right,
So this is, this Thule sub-basin, are we messing around with Tulare?
yes, they're
Well, they're the same.
Oh, they,
I mean, they're going to, do you want,
yeah, we're gonna talk about the Tulare Lake one
you want to
here.
talk about that one?
Yeah.
that is
Oh, for the
different, right?
allocation.
It is out,
The
yeah.
allocations are different, yes.
So north and southeast will be the same changes,
Yes,
Yes.
right? I just want to be
Yes.
clear.
Yeah.
North and southeast will be the same
Oh,
change.
yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
That's what I was.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
and those changes will be made in Tulare Lake as well.
yes,
Same, all those changes we just made will be made in all 3 policies.
Tulare Lake just looks a little different, I haven't read through it, but.
It's a different sustainable yield.
it's
Yeah.
a different sustainable yield, Myron, and obviously we took out references to,
Oh, here's that, okay.
yeah, to Angola and to the Appendix E, because Appendix E was specific to Tule subbasin.
Yeah.
But what I am gonna ask you guys to do, just go ahead and go to table 1 at the end.
It's this side.
Oh, it's
So
sideways.
hold on just a second, I gotta
Yeah,
fix
yeah.
it.
Okay, so the native yield, as we talked about, is for Tulare Lake is higher. That's based on the best available information we have right now. And the transitional, pumping is also, a bit higher, but it is, then starting to reduce down as well.
Can I ask why the native yield is?
For Tulare Lake?
Yeah.
The sustainable yield values for Tulare Lake were based on the modeling that was done, Myron, and Thule went through and allocated all of the losses in the canals and others directly to the people who brought in that water. And Tulare Lake so far has not done that. So Tulare Lake's native is therefore higher because of that fact. That's not the only reason, but that is part of it.
It likely will change. Tulare Lake hasn't done all the work that Thule has done. Tulare Lake hasn't dedicated the water to the importers yet. That won't happen, I think, is probably wrong. As soon as, Tri-County's the only one in Tulare Lake with an allocation until recently. Falls put one in, but there hasn't been anybody who's had to fight for their water yet. But as soon as they do, this will likely change. But right now is what Tulare Lake has, and so I'm not.
So the native yield technically is more focused on surface water running into the basin.
In Tulare Lake? Tulare Lake's native yield has all of the water that's coming in and then split up between everybody.
Right, and the precipitation yield is different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Native yield is basically all the surface water coming into the basin. Right.
Well, no, Myron, the native yield is inclusive of everything you just said, the precip, any surface water losses, but most importantly, the water that's coming into Tulare Lake is the underflow directly from Thule and Kauai. That comes, underflow, and then any losses on the back end of that underflow into the west side PSA or the west side subbasin. So when you look at that entire water balance, the native yield was determined based on that. But
Is that substantial difference?
It is, no, it is.
it is,
Big deal.
yeah, a substantial difference. That's how we ended up at the .44, because we took the higher value from Tulare Lake and we, used it
Yeah.
to
It's
justify.
very similar to Westlands, West Side, very similar, and those Kings is very similar to this too.
Yeah,
And it's all tentative, but no, West Side is, they're adopted, that's what they're,
And what's their native yield?
I think it's .6.
this is not out of line with, like Steve said, with West Side or with, with the Kings. And, but again, it's a matter of how you calculate it, it's a matter of how much surface water losses.
Kauai is the same.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Kauai is also
Kauai is pretty close.
this level.
And how did we get the short end?
But they just said about how Thule divided up the baby here on water brought it to the basin, big difference. A lot of the losses went to the appropriators.
Yeah.
That's big difference.
So Mark, we also have a huge debate in Thule, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but in Thule, look, if you got losses in the upper aquifer and you're pumping from the lower, you've heard me talk about this 1,000 times, right? How the heck is your native yield the same in the upper and lower? If the losses are up here, your native yield down here should be very different. But they should be two different numbers, right? So that's my concern is Thule is using a combined number that and yet the pumping is not equal in the upper and lower aquifers across the Thule subbasin. So there's still they're still,
But
they're still,
neither of these guys, right? Because there's a lot of lower rock water stuff.
yeah, there's a lot of lower aquifer pumping, yeah.
That's why, you know, when you look at the subsidence management plan, that's why it's the need for the subsidence management plan, really. Because there are areas, take Lower Tule, for example, they have a pretty good water budget. It's a great water budget, but they have some of the highest subsidence in the entire Tule subbasin. Why is that? Likely about what Amir was talking about. They're getting all the losses from the Tule, river, but they're pumping low, they're deep, and that's causing the subsidence in those areas. So, you know, that was the entire reason to have the management plan on top of the allocation, because the allocation may not get you there. You may still see these undesirable results, and you've got to have some other capacity to slow the pumping if you're seeing the undesirable results that are prohibited by SGMA.
So if you have any last minute changes, Steve, we obviously haven't had a chance to read your letter, but I think
No, I just told you, that was my comment on the
Yeah.
allocation. That was the sole
I
comment.
think we've addressed
Yeah.
some of those. But if anybody else on the call, please, if you have any other comments, concerns, changes that you'd like to see, please get a hold of Deanna, right? And talk to Deanna, and you've got, you know, there's a limited amount of time between now and the board, but I think this is pretty darn close to what the board is gonna see based after we make the changes that we talked about today. Okay. So, the other part of the conversation for today, how are we doing time-wise?
We have half hour, 35 minutes.
Is the subsidence management plan. And again, the subsidence management plans, you know, I'm gonna remind everybody, these are areas where we now start to see impact and the specific actions that we're gonna take. As we've already talked about, the state very much, it's talked about how much they like the Pixley plan, and so we have done very similar to the Pixie plan, and that's the current changes. I do want to,
Yeah, right in the middle of the table,
This one?
both, yes, that's the subsidence management, and
yeah,
It's
and then,
the same thing I have here. Is this it?
that's the allocation. Subsidence management is, yeah, they're all put together right there.
Because I had this clipped together on my file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're down the bottom.
Oh, may I have one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. They're just, we're stacked on top of each other. That's okay, Myron.
that, Matt.
No?
Yeah.
Myron, do you have this, have you seen this map?
Yes, I have.
You want the map?
I would love the map.
All right, well, let's get you fully involved here.
Thank
Oh,
you
she got
so
one,
much.
okay.
And then I'm gonna need tissue.
Right, exactly.
That's for after the meeting.
Martin, you actually, yeah, Martin does want one of these, because I made a change,
This map,
Oh, I got,
No, no.
so I have that one.
this map.
this map, yeah.
I just.
Yeah, I gave it to
Oh,
you.
you gave it over,
Julie.
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay,
What should we pull up on the screen?
Did you make changes on this?
I'm gonna talk you through the change I'm going to make.
You want that map
Okay.
instead of, what do you want?
No, we're gonna
Leave that.
talk about the map in a second. Yeah. Yeah.
That's from last week.
Yeah, okay. And then we're gonna pull that map up as soon as we're done.
Okay,
All right.
that too.
All right, so, the subsidence management plan. Similar to the allocation policy, we now have 3 subsidence management areas. We have the north, the southeast, and the Slurry Lake, management, areas. And they're very similar. Again, there's minimal changes between them, but we did go through and made a few modifications to the plan itself. And, so, just a reminder, the figure 1 that the plan refers to, that is the same figure that we looked at that shows the 3 management areas, so that, just so everybody knows.
I sent that out with the red line.
Okay.
yesterday.
Okay, perfect. Perfect, so that you all have the figure one. The background purpose didn't change, it kind of clarifies that, hey, we are, you know, we have to have a subsidence management plan, what we're trying to accomplish there in order to manage subsidence. The section 2 about the subsidence monitoring and management zones.
That should be figure 2 then, that map. In section 2, figure 2, is that the map?
It's this map,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
It's the one we talked about
it's
last
the
time.
grid map, yeah.
Okay,
That's figure one.
that's figure 2. This map here, the scope is
It
figure
says-
2.
It says figure one on here, but.
Yeah,
Figure one is the,
this map right here, Myron.
The little one is figure one.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so subsidence monitoring, section 2.0, the subsidence monitoring and management zones. This is for the areas that are at high risk, but are not yet starting to experience the 50% threshold for actions. So the actions that we're taking is the same as we've talked about before, which is the landowner registration and metering. And this occurs at 40%. Okay, so once we exceed 40%, we want to let people know that they're in a high-risk area. We want to make sure your wells are registered. We want to make sure that they're metered. And then we're going to start looking for what's going on, what's happening, you know, continue our investigation. But there's no reduction in pumping at that point. It is focused on, hey, we know we have a concern, let's address that, let's notify people, and then try to figure out what is causing that and what is, where do we have the exceedances or something else that is causing those. So no change in that.
Amir, just real quick, the map you gave us last time, this is last fall, is this the most current subsidence reading?
There is a new one that just came out.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is based on what?
This is still based on the October data, but
Oh,
there's.
so we just got some stuff this
Yeah.
spring?
Yeah, we got some stuff this spring that we would then update.
Okay.
And we'll do an update every quarter.
Because there's a couple areas that was in a tenth or half a percent of 40%.
Yeah,
I just noticed
so hold on, Steve, hold off on that, because I do want to talk about the map in a bit.
Got it.
But let me finish going
No,
through
fine, I'm sorry.
the plan and just pointing out the changes. Okay, so that was sections 2 and 3. And then section 4 is where we actually start issuing the corrective subsidence management orders, and those initially occur at 50% at section 4.32. So at 50%, we have changed this language slightly. And basically what we did is we allow you to continue pumping, and there was initially we were taking away transitional tier 1 water at 50%. Okay, that was previously in the old document, and we have taken out that limitation. Okay.
That's in this draft, right?
Yeah, that got taken out. So you no longer lose your tier 1 water at the 50%. Okay?
Okay, so only the recharge credits.
Only the recharge credit.
so you only lose the recharge credit.
Yes.
Okay.
What I changed.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, what I changed is the tier 1 loss, the transitional tier 1 water is now at 75%. It got moved from 50 to 75.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay?
So,
And just to be clear, it's tier 1 transitional from the lower aquifer wells at 75%. At
to use recharge credits?
No, Myron, what I took out was the language that prevented you from using any more tier one transitional water. You couldn't pump tier one transitional water at 50%. I took that out and I moved it to 75. So it allows you to continue pumping tier one
Yeah,
water.
but it has nothing, is there any change to the lower aquifer?
At 50%?
Yeah.
Any change from previous documents?
No recharge credits in the lower aquifer at 50%.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is Jay did call me this morning, and he's out of town. And he had a concern about this part of it. And I can't, I told him to text me this, get a screenshot, and this is exactly what we're talking about. And in our conversation, he was pretty concerned about, he doesn't know how, because he's already, based on this map, he's there, right? And he just has a big concern because some of his pumps are pumping to the lower aquifer. And he needs time to figure out how you're gonna basically.
You would have access still to tier one and native and recharge credits in the upper aquifer.
Because those recharge credits that he has, how's that gonna affect him in this scenario?
Yeah, no, he talked to me too about this, and I think
Okay,
he was very, expressed, I think very clearly at the last meeting, where his style was. So I think this is one piece, Amir, I appreciate you doing. I didn't catch this until you told me. So you made a change.
Let's talk about this for a minute. Because, the recharge credits that are already there, there's a question of whether we could grandfather what's already, and then we're talking about recharge from 2026 further. How do we treat that recharge? Is that recharge going to be treated? I mean, maybe that's how we make the change. We make the change in the recharge policy, and we say in the recharge policy, all recharge from 2026 further, if it's created in the upper aquifer, that recharge only goes to the upper aquifer as a credit. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Right,
To the,
Yeah,
I
I think that's where you would want to be, because right now with the policy didn't bifurcate.
Yeah, we're kind of
What
getting
the
away from
credits
that
are.
a little bit because it's very difficult to do. I think at 75%, we're gonna have to do it. And I
Yeah.
still think that people should start to, think about how they're gonna operate when it's at 75%. They should be operating, they're gonna have to think about having the availability of an upper aquifer well to utilize. But we could change that in a way where we just remove the recharge language and put that in the recharge policy. Because, there could be ASR, we could have places that,
Yeah.
find surface water and wanna do ASR, which would be lower aquifer. It would have to be specific to where that recharge is occurring.
So then what would be limited at 50% if we,
Not limiting much.
That's what I was gonna say. Well, I like that, right?
We've come a long ways on this policy, it's made a lot of changes.
yeah, because, looking at, what I saw yesterday, and of course, I didn't have the quilt to lay over the top of what they were talking about and how the subsidence is going. It doesn't look bad from the standpoint of what Tom Harder had on his map as to what the last 2 years were doing.
Yeah, in the last 2 years, yeah.
Right, so,
Yeah.
but, looking at, and I agree with Jay, looking at this, he's already, and you scratch your head kinda, because, even to the west of him, there's not a lot of pumping that happens out there, yet they're subsiding like crazy, and you go, why is that happening? I mean, think there's a lot of questions as to what exactly this data is showing, and is that relevant to what we're trying to do?
I think that's another reason for this management action, actually, because it does trigger an investigation. And I think, you know, there's going to have to be some thought about what that investigation looks like.
Because even,
There is
you know,
a
like,
need to know. And we have to remember, at this 4, this is uncoordinated with your neighbor, and your neighbor wants that much lower.
no, I know that, but the thing of it is, yeah, to me, that's the death of us all if we go that way, but, you know, it's just kind of hard to understand that, you know, even straight west of me, I know that there's a lot of new trees that way, but there's also a lot of ground that's not really in, you know, and you go, how in the world is that so much different? The quilts in Tulare, do you know? I think you had one.
I had the one.
Julie?
Yeah, there were two.
You know, and even in there, you know, I mean, you know, I'm in a square right next to Tipton, and all of a sudden, I'm like 5 to 10% less, or, you know, more than you go straight out west, where I know that the pumping is, or not the pumping, the subsidence is more, based on the maps that they show without the quilt, right? And I'm just going like, how in the world are they putting this quilt together? You know? So, but without the overlay, you know, from their maps to the quilt that was made, I didn't go exactly as okay, how come, you know, but.
And you're talking about the minimum threshold, why they chose what.
Well, yeah, minimum thresholds on each square, right? And then, you know, the comment was made, you know, well, they don't have as much infrastructure that they have to worry about this and that, but, you know, why are you allowing somebody to have that much more threshold than somebody else, right? And that just, I don't know, it just hurts certain people quick, right?
To follow what Myron, just said too, that in the comment letter, when you got a chance to read it, same thing I point out, it's like, hey, you know, we see a lot of subsidence throughout the 2D subbasin. We recognize it's a problem, but there still seems to be very high subsidence on the far eastern side of the basin with no confined aquifers. So, and we see a lot more per acre foot extraction north of us on a gross basis. So I just say that, to follow up what Myron was saying, that there's, I think, a lot of, I just want to be careful that we don't rush into this too quickly, just without taking some time to look at it a little closer. I mean, I don't think we have much time, but we're going to have to, and we're having this out and stuff. So the other thing I continue to point out, Deanna and Mayor both, is that, hey, you know, follow up what Myron and what Jay said a few weeks ago, is that, hey, we need more time. The only way we, under this policy, is to get a higher MT on the east side. You know, and I think I recommended 4.5. I think the letter says 5. We can get it to 5 because the northern area, I think, averages are about 6.5 feet. So that, to me, was what I pointed out. I did not see this. I didn't catch the change you made here in 4.321. So that is a major change. So.
There is one other major change. Steve, can you go ahead and go to the map?
Map?
Yeah.
I don't have the map on here. Okay, oh, that, which map?
The grid, the quilt.
That quilt, okay, yeah, so let me stop sharing, I'm gonna switch that. So that would be that one.
So if you look at zone, zone 18, 25, and 32.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to increase the MT there to 4.5 from 4. Now, it moves, 18 stays yellow, but 25 now turns green, and 32 stays green. But the the value there will be at 4.5 for those three, that was a decision that was made, and that'll change a little bit. Now, it doesn't change what Myron said about, you know, for example, 19, 20, and, what is it, 26 that are in the blue.
Yeah.
We went, Myron, as you move easterly across this, you can see we went from 5 to 4.5 to 4. And specifically, that was done because of the Bryant Kern Canal. And
Really?
yeah, and that was the way that the subbasin had said, look, we're gonna move, as we move easterly, the amount has to decrease. So that we are not, our pumping is not impacting subsidence on the canal. Everybody's pumping is having some impact, of course, but the question is, you know, as we move closer to the canal, how much are we gonna start to allow, a lower MT?
Well, I didn't think we were that close to the canal to make that happen.
It's not next door, but it is.
Like, if you look at the subsidence maps, you know, and you look at that area where there's a lot of orange,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, we don't have that map here
Yeah,
anywhere.
that was the one from yesterday that
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And, you know, even that is pretty localized. That's within, you know, I would say 10 mile. Maybe I'm talking wrong there, but, you know, and you could, we're a lot further away from the canal than that.
Yeah, but remember how the canal comes along the east side and then starts to move into Delano?
No, I know where it's at. I drive over it every day.
Yeah, so it's starting to get closer to us as it goes through Delano, right? The canal's moved westward.
But that part is not,
It's not the level of highest subsidence on the canal.
you know, that one has not been, I mean, that's not where the big influence is, right? Most of where the new build,
Is north
that's
of
where
that.
they're talking about
Yeah.
the major subsidence,
Yeah,
right?
north, it's right there, Deer Creek, it goes a little south of Deer Creek.
South of Deer
Yeah, it
Creek,
does.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's some subsiding parts in Delano early work.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
That's okay. I just, you know, want to remind everybody that critical infrastructure is built into Sigma. Although we have some disagreements with DEID, they're going to continue talking about their pipeline system as critical infrastructure. This 4-foot MT is 4 feet from their zero. I think their zero is, you know, not acceptable, but it is the hang-up right now in the Tule subbasin that will keep us all from being coordinated. It is the hang-up that's gonna keep us from signing a coordination agreement and going back for the state as a coordinated group. So,
Particularly as,
I don't think we can raise that MT, is what I'm
particularly
trying to
as
say.
close, I mean, they're 4, 3, I mean, next to Delano.
Yeah.
So they're not matching what they asked either.
No, the
They've
difference
asked for two,
is the difference is that they are willing to participate in a study to determine what those end up being.
Oh, okay.
That
Which we didn't agree to participate.
we did not,
Well, you know,
so.
Well, I think we made ourselves clear.
It's a difficult situation here to try to figure out.
Jay, in my letter, I think we're still pushing, hey, you know, for more time. I was up to see the 4.5 all the way over, at least over on the far eastern side too, 13 through 34, but anyway, enough said.
yeah, I was shocked when I saw this because, you know, when we were out there measuring Jay's wells, you know, the groundwater was even better than where I'm at, right? And I'm thinking, wow, this guy's doing good. And then I look at this, I'm going, oh, man, that's not good,
No,
right?
no.
You know, it's just
One of the
a
things,
lot of pumping going on through here,
Yeah.
all up in here, you know, it all kind of bleeds into each other a little bit.
Well, and then at the end of the day, we know what it's all about, right? I mean, there's no surface water, right? That's why.
there were
and there's
some
no hobby farms out there,
That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah,
I mean, we're all trying to make a living.
yeah.
Deanna, I mean, let's go back to your change here on the 50%, so I'll make sure I'm clear what you did. So, right now, you have worded it so that there's no recharge credit, but there's no mention, so the tier one is, as drafted, still available at 50%.
Yeah,
Okay.
right, that limitation was moved.
Add the word new to that, no new recharge credits. Be allowed in the lower aquifer.
Yeah, if we could do that, that would be very helpful. Yes.
And no transfer of the groundwater credits in. I mean, that's important. That's
Yeah.
really the important part of that paragraph.
What's that,
So if you were to buy, what if a person were to buy additional, your
Well,
pot of credits gets bigger,
it does. If you buy, that's different.
right? So
It
that's all
becomes
part
under
of one account,
account,
right?
Yeah. A transfer where landlord is selling
Yeah.
credits into the area,
Got
that
it.
would be prohibited.
Okay. All right. Well, if we can go with no new recharge, that would be great. Be helpful.
Right, and then just to be clear, that no tier one transitional pumping in item 2 with 75%, that no tier one transitional pumping will be allowed in the lower aquifers from wells contributing to subsidence. That got moved, we moved that from 50 to 75. You can
but you're still allowed to do upper aquifer.
you're still allowed to do upper aquifer, it says that specifically, yeah. Yeah, tier one transitional can still be out of the upper aquifer. And then in 3, at 100%, we're basically saying that you gotta cease pumping from wells contributing to subsidence.
So that's the question, Mayor, would that be a study would that track back to the original study that we did?
So we'd have to,
Or would we do another study?
it does, in the sections leading up to this, it does talk about, 4.1, for example.
Yeah, the investigation,
Yeah.
okay.
So there are investigations that
So
are
the
gonna
investigation would,
have to continue and talk about which wells
okay.
would be affected by number 3.
So the GSA is leaving themselves flexibility because we don't, our assumption is we can still access the lower aquifer wells, the upper aquifer wells.
Right, that's right,
But you're saying we're not gonna say that until we,
right.
Yeah.
At this point, we've hit the
If the science
MT.
is continuing, once we've hit the MT, that's
mm-hmm.
not, that's,
Yeah. And then we're gonna make the changes to the grid, so those three zones that I mentioned, they're gonna increase, that drawing was already, it's probably sitting in my email as we're talking.
Okay, you'll send that out.
Yeah, we'll send that out, but the only significant change it makes, obviously it lowers the percentages, and it does change zone 25 in particular to a grid.
Can I get into the green?
You're 34, Larry, if I remember right.
I've been lobbying for it, but I don't know, so far I haven't heard much movement on that, Myron.
I'm right there.
Have we had any comments from High Speed Rail on any of our plans?
And honestly, I don't know if they've commented on anybody's
I
plan.
haven't seen any comments.
I've never
Right
seen,
to.
they're a public agency, so if they were commenting, it would be in people's.
I just say that because I was at a meeting yesterday in Bakersfield, and the High Speed Rail person was there talking with the water district about crossing one of their canals,
Yeah,
and I started thinking, it's like, wow. I mean, they're out here spending billions of dollars.
mm-hmm,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know how they engineered, how much subsidence they've engineered into it.
They didn't.
I don't know, I mean, I'm just-
Their environmental impact report said that science wasn't a concern other than flooding.
Other than flooding, yeah.
yeah.
And from the flooding is really a scouring issue.
What?
The impact to their, foundation.
To the foundation.
Okay. Was there any more changes, Amir?
No, that was it.
And these are the same changes through all three?
Through all three, yeah.
Is there any subsidence in Florida Lake over here on this side?
There is not much of a concern.
But not much,
Over
yeah.
here?
Yeah.
Not much.
Not much at all.
They like it, according to the answer.
It's beneficial.
Yeah, it's beneficial. That language was called out specifically at the Sigma update on, Wednesday, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay, so just for the sake of everybody on the call, I just want to reiterate the changes that we've talked about. Section 4.32. In the second sentence there, that starts off with no recharge credits will be allowed in the lower aquifer. That will be changed to no new recharge credits will be allowed in the lower aquifer at the 50%. Okay, and then the other changes we talked about are, oh, good.
The only caveat to that needs to be some kind of language around ASR. Or some sort of, right? I mean, or should we not worry about that until, I mean, it's not like I have a bunch of ASR wells going in, but.
So let's say you do put in ASR and you get credit, but you already have 50%. Your subsidence doesn't change. Your rate of subsidence might change, right? But if you're still at 50% subsidence, you're still at 50%. If you hit 35%, so are we going to allow you to pump more from the lower aquifer if you at 50%? That's the question. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. Yeah.
I don't know.
So that is worth a discussion, but I don't want to
If
deviate.
we had a lot of water available to us, this would probably be a bigger discussion.
Yes,
But, you know,
yes,
who's gonna invest in that? Where's the water coming from? I don't know.
right. Where's the water going to come from? That's the question.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. The second change I was just going to mention to everybody on the call is, again, on the subsidence 12 map, for lack of a better term, zone 18, 25, and 32, all of those will be moved. The MTs will be increased to 4.5. And Martin keeps asking me, why isn't it being moved over to 4.5, just slightly more?
How about 4 3/4?
4 3/4.
Let me see if the math.
4 1/4. Hey, I'm with my.
4 1/4, yeah, 1.67, let's see here. Yep, that'll work. That just means below 40.
Okay, then the third thing, again, these are going back to October, so we do need to update what the new subsidence values are and update that and continue to give you guys a new one of these maps every quarter. Okay? Fun. Again, same thing that I just said earlier. Stacy has
Tomorrow at noon.
Stacy has very little faith in me. So we'll get revised ones, post them up, and then if you have comments, please, Mark, your comments for today, repeat them again. The board needs to hear them.
One question I had, correct me if I'm wrong, but in yesterday's, annual report, they were saying that the subsidence pretty much for the last 2 years has leveled out, or no subsidence.
No, there are still areas of subsidence, even in the southeast area, 0.25 to 0.5. Mainly in this middle corridor here. There's definitely work. Most of the other areas in the southeast remain pretty stable, but we came off of flood, a very wet year, and that made a big difference. This year is gonna be a little less than normal. I think you'll see subsidence pick up again.
Yeah, and like I mentioned yesterday too, a lot of this has been from historical data, right, back so many years, but we haven't pushed the issue like we are now as far as as management goes. And so, and I truly believe that, 2 years ago already, I said, well, if we try super hard, and everybody's coordinated, and we sink as much water as we can whenever we got it, right? And push water down here as much as we can. And it doesn't matter if it's, if the sinking is here, but or up here, in DID or wherever, but they gotta be willing to give us some credit for,
I'm all about
even if we,
a collaborative
too bad that
project in
even
the
if
east,
we
but-
decide to say, hey, there probably isn't extra water, but, sink it on our behalf, whatever it is, right? Everybody gets plus, right? Everybody wins, but, I think there's too many hands out for it above where we get it.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough to get.
It's gonna be competitive, it's gonna be very competitive going forward on the front end.
Yeah.
But there's gonna be years where we have some major flows, like what happened a couple of years ago. Even uncontrolled flows on the two.
And even there,
On the White River.
that's where it all starts talking about, right?
Yeah.
And even there, we were so ill-prepared.
Yeah.
So ill-prepared, right? We had major losses where, flooding happened on stuff that shouldn't have been flooded.
Yeah.
And if we could control that, right, and just say, bam, 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 this is where it has to go, and this is where we can sink it. Because even in that year, there was, I don't know, I'm not gonna say 50%, but there was a lot of basins that did not have water in them,
Right.
and it should have. It shouldn't have went all out there.
Agreed.
And so, again, going forward, I hope we learn our lessons, but when we have one next year like that,
Yeah. There's been a lot of investment and things are getting better. It's just, this area is very difficult. There's not the surface water conveyance or availability for this area. It's tough.
Hey, Dan, because we got to leave here in a second, but could we just talk procedure as far as adopting a plan, where we might be as far as, with the State Water Board process?
Okay.
Once we go about adopting all these changes in our GSP, what are you looking at as far as
So they
where's
have,
Craig County positioning ourselves?
in the Tule Subbasin, they have our draft plan,
Okay.
which they've read. They've basically said all of the coordinated things in our draft plan, they like. They have a few things, language changes they wanna have made. We haven't seen that exactly yet, but they're getting ready to come back, Bixley and Lower Tule, with kind of a full thing that will have all those language changes for all of us to make.
Okay.
That's good. Whatever policy is adopted by the board, we will add to that. And, I believe if we adopted both of these, it would get us, I don't see how they could, not give us the same deference they would give Bixley and Lower Tule at that point. We would be on par with them. Of course, some of the language in ours, they might look at theirs and go, sorry, you didn't use their language exactly, and we wanna see that change in yours. I don't know, we'll see, but we still try to maintain that we have some management flexibility.
Okay.
So that's where that is. So whatever is adopted by the board, May 1st, we are going to submit with our draft plan that's already there. I'll submit that, for their review, and then whenever it comes before the board to request this exemption from fees, I will make the same case as Bixley and Lower Tule, if that's what happens. Tulare Lake, we have a plan that is drafted, it's just waiting for these appendices, and it'll go in.
So, the state board,
Well, it should go out to the public
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
It's not quite that quick. We haven't sent it to anybody. I've just been waiting for these policies to insert so that it goes in to the state.
the state board staff has offered to meet with each of the GSAs in the Tule Subbasin with those comments that
Yeah.
Deanna just said, specific comments on your specific plan. And Deanna and going to wait until the board first meeting. And that way we have these policies, we have the, management plan. And then when we do meet with them, we can say, look, here's all the other stuff, and then start getting the ball rolling with the submittal. There's 2 management plans that are left to do, and that was part of what I was gonna talk about for the next meeting.
Okay.
So just a reminder to everybody, there is a board meeting on the 1st. The allocation plan, the draft allocation plan, and the draft subsidence plan, all 6 of these documents will be before the board for individual approval of each document. You have a few things to do, Myron, at the next meeting.
It's gonna be a long agenda, unfortunately.
It's a long agenda, yeah. And that's at 1 o'clock on the 1st. And then our next advisory committee meeting is May 28th. And in that meeting, we'll be bringing you the draft management plan for water levels and a separate water quality management plan as well. And now the good thing about those is that water levels and water quality can change. So, there is a way to get out of those. If you get put into a higher zone in 1 year, depending on what happens, you can get out and get back to the green.
We don't have a lot of water quality issues,
Right.
really, so,
Right.
that aren't legacy issues.
So that's the focus for the next one, and then after that, then it's just a matter of getting the document out for public comment, and then resubmitting it. Of course, in the Tule Subbasin, we will continue to be meeting with State Water Board staff and getting input and feedback from them. Fuller Lake, because of the Kings County Farm Bureau lawsuit, there's still no communication with the state board staff, and they did talk about that a little bit yesterday in that update meeting that they had.
What is the latest, anything?
I don't think they've even had, I don't know, nothing.
Well, you said they did talk about it, but there's no.
Yeah, they basically said that because of the lawsuit that there was,
Oh, okay.
Nothing,
yeah.
yeah.
Does anybody know what the lawsuit is doing?
I think it's just waiting for the
Yeah,
next hearing time, I think, yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Get, calendar, so.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Things move at their own pace.
Yeah.
Right.
The judicial plan,
Yeah.
so. Which is fine with me,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think anybody's complaining over it, so like.
All right, Kathy, you're on. Kathy, real quick, do you have anything you wanted to share with the group? Just keeping it short? Kathy, you're still muted. She might have stepped away. Okay.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you
Really
are.
quickly. Really quickly. Yeah, I've kind of taken over for the Thule Trust and the interim, so we're going to be searching for an executive director. I just wanted to let you know, I'm not sure if this is the proper forum, but the trust has had about $400,000 for a floodplain project. And I just presented that to the grant management team for MLRP. And I think it's a possible go forward to do some work on the White River and Lower Deer Creek, looking at potential floodplain. And it's very general and conceptual, but I just wanted to let you know that I think we're going to be going forward with a study, looking at floodwaters and doing an H&H study along in conjunction with the work that the County of Tulare is doing through a Cal OES funded project. So,
Did you say that's through MLRP, Kathy?
so actually the funding that was sitting with the trust, we had over $400,000, and it was to do a groundwater dependent ecosystem project. Well, since we've determined there are no groundwater dependent ecosystems in the Tule Subbasin, it seemed kind of silly to be trying to do a project like that. So Max had kind of helped me with a little bit of scoping, but it's to align with the work that Tri-County has been doing. And, we're gonna give the money back to the GSAs to look at this, potential project. So we can talk a little more offline, but I just wanted to let you know that, the trust is not gonna go forward with a GDE project because we don't have any.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. Okay,
You're
thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you, please, we'll see you hopefully on the 1st for the board meeting, and then, we'll see you here for the 28th meeting. Thanks, everyone. Take care.